So let's see what you guys came up with. I got 12 of you to drag a red dot somewhere that was confusing. And let me show them as overlapping. Okay, so starting up here, this is just the directions. And so there's a little bit of confusion right here where we have b squared, which means whatever the value of b is just a number. We're going to square that number when we plug it in right here. And so starting with the given quadratic equation of 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 equals 0. Here it is again. The first step is to identify a, b, and c. And so we have a red dot here on the negative in front of the 5. And so the reason 5 is negative is because we have subtraction right here. So standard form of the equation is up here. And notice we have addition between the two, between the three terms. We're adding these three terms. And so when you see subtraction, well, now you got to think of that as adding the opposite. So this value here is not just 5, but negative 5. Same thing for the 12, not just 12, but negative 12 because of the subtraction. For step 2, substituting into the quadratic formula, some confusion here with negative 5. Okay, so your quadratic formula is given to you up here. And if you look, B shows up 2 times, A shows up 2 times, C shows up once. So once you know what A, B, and C are, they're just numbers. You replace those letters with the number they're equal to. So B squared means instead of B, I'm going to put negative 5 here. And then once you've substituted it all in, we're going to go to step 3, which is to simplify this. So all they did from this step here to this step up here is just rewrite it. They didn't actually do anything different. They just took this entire equation and wrote it up here. And so, we're going to simplify this. And so they're actually doing a lot of different things just in one step. Go from here to here. The opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. They did that. The denominator, 2 times 2, they changed that to 4. The power of negative 5 squared, because the squared is around with parentheses, your base is negative 5. This means negative 5 times negative 5, which is positive 25. So that's where the 25 came from. They also simplified 4 times 2 times negative 12. When you multiply these three numbers together, you're going to get a negative product. And 4 times 2 times 12 is 96. Then from this step down to here, what they did is they did 25 minus negative 96. So when you subtract a negative, you can think of it as adding the opposite. So it's really 25 plus positive 96, or 121. And then they simplified that. The square root of 121 is 11. Once you got simplified down to this, can't do any more simplification, so we're going to do step 4, where you break it into 2 equations. One equation is x equals 5 plus 11 divided by 4. And the other equation is x equals 5 minus 11 divided by 4. So that's the difference between the 2 equations. You have plus and minus between the 5 and the 11. So some confusion here. How does this turn into 4? Well, 5 plus 11 is 16. 16 divided by 4 is 4. You simplify this side, we get this. So these are the 2 solutions to this quadratic equation here. All right, and so we're going to practice this today. What we're going to work more specifically on practicing is how do we plug in to the formula? Okay, because if you don't plug into the formula correctly, you won't get the right answer. So we're going to be looking at an equation and going through these steps. We're going to figure out first, what's A, what's B, what's C? They're just going to be numbers. And then we're going to substitute them into the formula. Then we're going to simplify. Then we're going to write two equations and solve. All right, so I'm going to move us to this slide here. We're going to solve using the quadratic formula by filling in the blanks below. And up here in the corner, I put the standard form of a quadratic equation. Is where you have ax squared plus bx plus c on the left of the equal sign. And on the right-hand side, we have it equal to 0. And then right below that, this is the quadratic formula. It's always the same formula. Use it and it doesn't change. X equals negative b. So if b turns out to be a positive number, we have to make it negative. If b is a negative number, the opposite of a negative means it turns positive. Okay, so then the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and then that's a giant fraction bar, so that's all the numerator, and the denominator is 2 times whatever a is. So we're going to go through those steps. So the first thing you want to do is not even step 1, it's kind of like step 0, is make sure that you have standard form. I'm going to type on here for you guys too. So step 0, check for standard form. And that just means that it looks like what you see right here. This right here is standard form. So step 0, check for standard form. Do you have it in this format where the trinomial is on the left in decreasing order? The x squared term, the x term, the constant equals 0. This is what we have. The x squared term, the x term, the constant equals 0. So you want to make sure that you do have that. And we do. Because if you didn't have standard form, you'd have to rearrange it. Just using rules of equations. Something was on the wrong side or in the wrong order, you can change things around. Okay, and now we're going to go to step 1. Want to identify A, B, and C. All right, so that means we want to know what numbers are A, B, and C. And I'm just going to use the same colors that they are showing you up here. So A is whatever's in front of the x squared term. Look in front of your x squared. What's the coefficient? It's 2. Yeah, it's 2. So I'm going to put a 2 right here. And then we want to look at B next. Okay, B is whatever's in front of the x. Yes, now be careful when you see subtraction. We got to include that. So B is negative 9. And then for C, what is being added here? Is it positive 5 or negative 5? Yeah, negative 5. So we have now identified A, B, and C, and we're ready to go to step 2. Step 2 says substitute into the quadratic formula. Okay, and so you have the quadratic formula on the screen right now. It's also on your slide. So you can see the value of A is 2. So wherever A is, we have to replace A with 2. It's in 2 spots. It's right here in this box after the 4, and also in the denominator being multiplied with 2. And then we're going to substitute what B is equal to. B shows up in 2 places as well. Okay, it's the first number here in this first box, -9. And it is also being squared in the discriminant, -9. Now, one thing you can do to help you from keep from making a mistake is if you write out what you see here before you start plugging in values, that's usually pretty useful because it's really easy to get mixed up with those negatives. The first term in the numerator is negative whatever B is. So you have to have this minus sign here because it's part of the formula. And then B turns out to be -9. So I don't want to accidentally forget one of those. All right, so we're going to be taking the opposite of a negative. So this term is going to turn into +9. I'm still missing my value that I need in this box here, which is C. C equals -5. All right. Now we have substituted all our values in, and we're ready to go to step 3, which is to simplify. All right, so I'm going to take this whole, it's just a big fraction is what it is basically. X equals all this stuff in the numerator divided by 2 times 2. I'm going to simplify that fraction. And to do that, I could do more than one step at a time. Did I just delete my response? Oh, good. There's an undo button for that. It's like, what the heck? Just disappeared. All right. Okay, so let's just write the giant fraction to start with. Okay, because there's so many things going on. The best way to keep organized is maybe start by writing a giant fraction. So we have x equals, I have a giant fraction. Well, the numerator is really complicated. The denominator is pretty simple. 2 times 2, what does that simplify to?
4.
2 times 2.
4.
4. So I'm going to put a 4 in the denominator. And now up here in the numerator, let's see, there's 2 terms in the numerator. That first term, the opposite of -9 becomes +9. We have the plus minus symbol. And then we have a big square root. Underneath the square root, that's called the discriminant. And so we're going to simplify the discriminant. We have -9 squared, which means -9 times -9, which is 81, minus, and I'm going to multiply all this out in this step. So I'm subtracting 4 times 2 times -5. If I multiply 2 positive integers with a negative integer, I'm going to get a negative integer as my answer. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. And now We've done a bunch of steps just in one rewriting of the equation. I want to keep simplifying the discriminant and the square root. So right now I have 81 minus negative 40. When that happens, you're going to change it to adding the opposite. So it becomes 81 plus positive 40 instead. So we still have 9 plus or minus. We still have 4 in the denominator. But now in the square root, what is 81 plus 40? If anyone has it. 121, yeah, it is. Good, 121. And that's a great number to take the square root of because 121 is a perfect square. You know what integer you square to get 121? What's the square root of 121? 11. Yeah, 11. Okay, so this is just going to turn into 9 plus or minus 11 divided by 4. So that's the third step. That's the simplifying step. And now I'm on my last step, which is the fourth step, which says write two equations and solve. So that's what we're going to do last. Step 4. So the two possibilities here is that x is equal to 9 plus 11 divided by 4, or x is equal to 9 minus 11 divided by 4. The only difference between those two equations is the operation in between 9 and 11. 9 plus 11 or 9 minus 11. Those are the two possibilities. So on the one on the left, 9 plus 11 is 20 divided by 4, or x equals 5. On the right-hand side, 9 minus 11 is going to give me negative 2 divided by 4, or x equals negative 1/2. So those are the two possibilities, and those are my two possible answers for x. So this is how we can use the quadratic equation to solve this. Now, I'm going to put you on student pace, and when you're ready, you're going to go to the next slide. And it's another problem just like this one. And you're going to go through the steps. It will be in standard form, so you don't even have to check for that. You're going to identify what numbers represent A, B, and C. You're going to substitute them into the quadratic formula. You're going to simplify the right-hand side of this equation, what x equals, and then break it into two equations and solve each one to get the two answers.